It's a special edition of The Closing Bell, the Facebook Frenzy. It's the epic IPO everyone's talking about. How can you cash in on the biggest public debut in recent memory? Will the offering be a game changer or the next big tech bust? We've got all the angles covered as the countdown to Facebook's IPO begins right now.
All right,
and we have the closing bell.
We have a price.
Number.
Apparently, they have priced the IPO of Facebook at $38 per share. Let's go to Kayla Tausche, who's been following this story all along from the beginning, and I guess we got a price now. That was quick.
We do have a price, Bill. We've been reporting this all day. Apparently, just crystallizing at $38 per share for that Facebook price. Now, we reported that investors were being floated the idea of $39 a share. But take a look at what the markets have been doing in the month of May, which is when they've been marketing this deal to investors. The NASDAQ 100 down sharply, down 7 2/3%. The S&P 500 or the S&P Tech Index down 8%. That was a benchmark for this deal, and that's why you're seeing it priced at the high end of the range, but not over that range.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go to Kate Kelly. I mean, it hits the top of the range, Kate, but it didn't hit the whisper number, which was above that.
That's right, and I think there were conversations with investors about, you know, a dollar above, maybe even $2 above, but in the end of the day, 38 has been consistently the number that the underwriters, the company, have been talking about with their large account holders. And apparently there was a pricing call at 345 to kind of hash this out. There is consensus, very broad consensus, at $38. The final I's have to be dotted and the T's crossed, but I'm told this is highly unlikely to move, and we should expect to see this landmark deal at 38.
All right, stand by, ladies. We'll be coming back to you as the news warrants. I'm sorry? All right, let's price out this with Fusion Analytics' Josh Brown. He says do not chase Facebook on this first day. Tom Belesis of John Thomas Financial has money in the game with Facebook. His firm with $47 million in pre-IPO shares, and Bob Pisani's joining us as well. And at $38, Josh, how do you view the valuation on Facebook here?
I think it's about what we expected, and I think the stock opens up at a premium even from there. And I think it'll be probably a positive for the markets overall tomorrow, because this is a really dreary atmosphere, but something like a Facebook could really make people feel a little bit better about wading back into some NASDAQ names. So that's probably what we had expected, and I bet it opens up at a decent pop from there.
But you still wouldn't buy it at these prices?
I mean, if you're in it on the IPO price, you're in a great position. I don't know that it makes sense to buy this stock at 50, 55. You might want to hang tight.
Tom, you've got money in the game here. You've got some Facebook shares, $38 a share. What do you think?
You know, I think you've got millions of people out there that have been waiting for this day to come. So I think you're going to have people who couldn't buy Facebook shares in the pre-IPO market that are going to come into the market and buy the stock wherever it opens up. Now, if you look at it from a longer-term perspective, I mean, look at Google. Everyone thought it was overvalued at 90. It went to 700 in 3 years. I think you see something similar, if not more, here with Facebook.
Yet we have a record number of insiders holding a large percentage of the stock.
That is correct.
And they're selling it, too.
And they're going to sell it partly because of tax law changes that are coming up at the end of the year. So does that change the dynamic of how this deal will proceed?
You know what? I think not. Why? Because it always comes down to the supply and demand of economics, right? I think there's a lot of people out there that have been waiting to buy this stock that have cash on the sidelines. So it's going to be an even exchange, so to speak, of people selling versus people coming into the market and buying. But I think overall, longer term, this is an amazing opportunity for people to buy the stock.
Hey guys, one thing to keep in mind, though, this is going to be 400 some odd million shares. That's going to double within 180 days to over 1 billion shares out there. If you look at the example of LinkedIn, I think the message is you're going to have time. You do not have to own on day one. If you want to be in, allow for that process to take place. There are 3 separate lockup expiries: 90 days, 150 days, and 180 days. Cool out, I think, is the key word.
All right, stand by there, gentlemen. Bob, I haven't forgotten about you. I want to bring in Julia Borston at this point. Julia?
Yeah, I'm here outside of Facebook headquarters, and I know there's going to be a big celebration tonight. The company is hosting an event for its 2,500 employees here, a hackathon, and everyone's going to be talking about the stock price. Everyone's going to be spending the night here working on their different projects, engineering and coding their different projects, and then tomorrow morning waiting for Mark Zuckerberg to ring the opening bell. But, you know, at the upper end of the range, but not beating that range, everyone's been wondering where the stock's going to price. No matter what, it's going to make a lot of the people in here a lot of money.
Bob Pisani, you know, you wonder what this will do to the market's mood tomorrow. especially when we closed down 155 points on the Dow tonight. The NASDAQ down 2% on the day. Can the market be placed on Facebook's shoulders tomorrow and go higher?
No, I don't think that the market is going to turn around on Facebook. It's got a lot of bigger concerns. I'm happy about Facebook. It's got people talking. It's got people excited. And I hope it does well for everyone, because I want people to do well in the markets. That's what we want here. But I'm a little more concerned about what's going on overall in the stock market. And we simply dropped dramatically in the last half hour. There's been no buying at the 11:30 close after Europe for a week now. There's been no buying in the last hour. We simply keep drifting lower. And today we finally had a day where the volume really picked up in the last hour. We haven't seen these in some of these declines in the last week.
Let's bring back in Kayla Tausche. She's been doing more reporting on this. Kayla?
Well, Sue, I think broad consensus, like Kate said, is really key here. The pricing call started at 345. Sometimes you can see these calls wind on for hours and see the price not come out until later in the evening because there's so much disagreement over the price here. I think that's a good sign that not only the investors who are selling out, but also the company felt comfortable with that range, and they got enough of a signal from investors that that was a price that they felt very good about their models.
Tom, obviously the company's going to have to find ways to grow beyond what they've already done. They've had a tremendous growth curve the last 8 years that they've been in existence, and the valuation, I think, reflects that growth curve at this point, don't you think?
I do, but
how do they grow it beyond this point?
Let's not forget, there's been, I think, a total of approximately $10.1 billion invested into the company, right? Now they're going to have an additional $13 billion invested from the IPO. So with what Mark Zuckerberg has done with this company up to this point, with another 12 to 13 billion is war chest, I think the valuation will supersede anything else, and the value of the stock will justify the valuation.
So much of their business model is based on advertising revenue.
It is.
And in a recent poll that CNBC did with the Associated Press, a majority of those polls said they don't click on the advertisements. So does the advertising revenue model still maintain them and continue their growth, as Bill suggested?
I think it does, but we cannot forget that this company is going to create so much commerce that is yet to be known that the valuation may look cheap in 3 or 4 years.
Really?
Because the price goes lower? Josh Brown, what about that question about advertising and the role it will play in the future of this company? You know, you already feel the price is expensive at this point. Can they grow into their valuation, do you think?
I think at the early stages, it's not going to trade based on any kind of valuation. It's going to trade based on sentiment and excitement, and that's fine, and nobody should be shocked. What ends up happening, though, is when you start getting into earnings modeling, you start looking at multiples to cash flow. I don't know how you get much past $3 a share in the first couple of years, and when you get there, it's tough to say that this is going to command that much of a higher multiple than, let's say, an Apple or a Google already does right now. So it's not a bad stock, it's not a bad company, but I think it's really important to understand that we're already pricing in some amazing expectations.
Is it fair, Josh, to do that on a multiple to cash flow? I mean, is earnings that irrelevant? I mean, it's 100 times earnings probably tomorrow.
Once again, tomorrow nobody cares about earnings. Tomorrow it's all about, oh my God, Facebook is here. And that's cool. I have no problem with that.
I've seen that movie before.
Yeah,
nobody cares about earnings. We know where that came from.
Right.
Gentlemen, stand by. We're going to keep you around as we continue to follow this story. And again, if you just joined us, we have a price on the IPO for Facebook, $38 a share.
Bill and I are back in just a moment.
Yeah, we're just getting started on this special IPO edition of Closing Bell.
It hasn't even traded yet, but is Facebook already overvalued? Up next, one top tech analyst explains why he wouldn't buy the IPO with his own money, much less yours. He's Facebook's co-founder, CEO, and he owns a majority of its voting class shares. Is a bet on Facebook really a bet on Mark Zuckerberg? And is that a good thing for shareholders? Do you think Facebook will live up to its sky-high valuation? Tweet us your answers at CNBC Closing Bell. Your responses later in the show. Watching a special edition of the Closing Bell, the Facebook IPO. Now back to Bill and Sue at the New York Stock Exchange.
And if you're just joining us, Facebook has priced its initial public offering at $38 a share. It will now be the largest ever internet IPO. We have a full cast of characters here to comment on this. We want to start, though, with Carly Fiorina, the former chair and CEO at Hewlett-Packard, and now a CNBC contributor. Also with us today is David Garrity of GVA Research, and we also are rejoined again by Josh Brown and Tom Belesis. But Carly, we want to start with you because you've been there. You ran a Silicon Valley behemoth in Hewlett-Packard. What is Mark Zuckerberg going through right now? What do you make of the IPO as it gets ready to trade tomorrow?
Well, and I think back to my experience when I helped lead what was then the biggest IPO in U.S. history, Lucent Technologies from AT&T. And what is going on right now in Mark's life is an incredible amount of excitement, frenetic activity, and a huge set of expectations. And so I think you've been talking about what is the fundamental question about Facebook. Can it possibly live up to the very high expectations? I would argue in the short term, probably not. But on the other hand, I don't think he should be focused on the short term. And in the long term, probably so. And so I think the key now is for Mark and his board to remain focused on their long-term vision, to be as transparent as possible about how they mark progress towards achievement of their goals, and to give shareholders regular updates on how are they doing on monetizing all of that advertising potential, and how is their strategy going on mobile apps.
What's the biggest change that occurs when you flip the switch and you're a publicly traded company? He's been running a company for 8 years, starting with his dorm room in Harvard. Now he's the biggest internet IPO of all time. What will be the biggest change that he faces now?
Now he literally has millions of people looking over his shoulder and second-guessing every move he makes. And that's going to be a big transition, and it's why the board will be so important to give him the support that he needs to ignore some of those onlookers when they're not being particularly productive.
Yeah, do you think he's up to it? How do you think he'll fare on that? I mean, it is a complete change of his life in many different ways. How do you think he'll fare?
Oh, I think he'll fare all right for two reasons. First, look what he's done so far. I mean, it really is, this is historic, not just because it's the largest internet IPO ever, but think about what Facebook has done literally to change our world and to change so many people's lives. So what he's already accomplished is unprecedented. And I think and hope that he will have a board around him who will give him the support that he needs.
More conversation to come here, folks. Please stand by. Let's get back to Kayla Tausche, who is on top of the story, following it minute by minute for us. Kayla?
Well, Bill, I want to talk a little bit about what went into this pricing tonight. If you take a look at the NASDAQ composite, obviously this is the exchange where Facebook is going to trade, really the tech benchmark that we're looking at here. Closing the day down 2%. It's a bad day for the VIX, bad day for the overall market. And if you see something like this happening throughout the day, even if you've canvassed investors at $1 above the range, you really don't want to overextend yourselves. And that's why they pulled back to $38. Investors seeing the market weakness today and saying, you know what, I might buy at 39, but I won't feel great about it. So I wanted to show you guys this chart because this played a big role in today's pricing.
Yes, indeed. The move will be a big thing. David Garrity, what do you think? $38 hit the high end of the range, didn't go above it as some opin that it might do, but what do you make of the valuations on Facebook right now?
I mean, the valuation means obviously that they've got a lot of fronts on which they have to execute positively, namely this transition over to mobile formats, being able to monetize that. And obviously some people think that they'll never get into China. So clearly there's a lot that has to be done, but definitely, as Carly said, nothing succeeds like success until you start running into obstacles. And I think things that happened earlier this week, like GM making a very noisy exit.
What'd you make of that? And the timing of that announcement too, by the way.
I thought it was very interesting, both in the timing, but I think it's also significant from the standpoint of saying, can advertisers actually go and spend money on Facebook to actually realize commerce? You can build all the brand awareness you want, but if you actually can't transact or motivate consumers to spend money, you have to question the value of the medium over time.
Tom holds Facebook. He's bullish for the long term and the short term on the stock. Would you buy it, David?
Only on a pullback.
Okay.
How significant a pullback?
25% pullback.
25% pullback.
Yes.
Take that, Tom.
Carly, what did you think of the GM announcement and the timing that they would be pulling their ads from Facebook?
Well, you know, believe it or not, my guess is the timing might have been inadvertent. I know that sounds crazy, but I can imagine General Motors is a big, big corporation. I can imagine someone in marketing or PR sort of putting this out routinely and not honestly thinking it through. My guess is this didn't go all the way to the CEO or the board, so it could have been one of those unfortunate coincidences, frankly, from both General Motors and Facebook's point of view, because I think what that announcement did was start a whole conversation about, well, why is Ford different? Why does Ford feel good about its advertising? The truth is, this could say as much about General Motors as it does about Facebook's advertising.
All right, I got one more question for you, Carly, but first let's go to Julia Borston outside Facebook's headquarters with more on this development on General Motors, right?
Yeah, I would say that the timing was probably inadvertent. We have to remember that right now we're also in upfront ad sales week. So this is the time of year when big marketers like GM figure out where they're going to be allocating their money. Also, the $10 million that they were spending on actual Facebook ads was just a quarter of the total amount they were spending on content for Facebook. And a lot of the folks I've talked to in the advertising industry said that to spend $30 million on other Facebook-related content was not the right way to spend money on Facebook ads. And Ford made a point of saying that Facebook advertising works if you do it right, sort of a little bit of a dig at GM there. So the other thing I would point out about Facebook ads is that Facebook is just touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of the Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 advertisers. Many of its advertisers are smaller and mid-sized businesses, and what they really need to do to grow their businesses is target more of those major advertisers like GM and Ford.
I don't know, call me cynical, but who didn't know that this was the week that Facebook was coming public and make that announcement? Carly Fiorina, before we go to this break, you know, there was a movement earlier this week, a group calling for Facebook to add a woman to their board before the IPO. Obviously unrealistic in that regard, but what do you make? You know the ins and outs and the workings of Silicon Valley. They have an all-male, all-white board at this point. Do you suspect that Sheryl Sandberg will want to migrate this board into a more equal men-to-women kind of a board, or what do you make of this right now?
Well, what I think is that a board is incredibly important. I frankly think we should focus as much of our attention